We are live here on the Me and Jesse podcast. I am so excited. To me, it is Michael Landsberg and Ron McLean as the most iconic
out of the gate
sports broadcasters in, for sure, Canada, probably North America. For me, anyway.
No, let's go with the world, because I'm huge in Mexico, so North America is covered right there. There's the Pacific Rim, which I'm not as strong in, but I'd say other than that, I dominate the world.
I honestly, I'm a big fan. I watched your show for years and years and years, and so I believe I even saw Mark on there. I'm not 100% sure, but I've seen the reruns now when Mark was actually on the show. But Mark has.
He was?
Yeah, I know. I think he was on there once or twice, maybe.
You know, it's funny. Why don't you ask me what I thought of Mark?
Yes, well, that
for real.
You guys know I'm here, right? Like I'm sitting right here.
No, he can't hear what we're saying, so I'll say anything. Okay. By the way, you're so wrong about one thing. You're saying you and Ron McLean. I mean, first of all, you couldn't have two more opposite guys, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all.
No, but
I just mean we're just really, really different. And he, would have the fame and the notoriety that I never had and never will have, because I've always been kind of a niche broadcaster. Like Off the Record was sure. Not Hockey Night in Canada. It was like, and I always knew I'm a guy that some people like and some people really dislike. So anyway, just to clear that
and to me, and again, you can't compare apples and oranges, obviously, but for me, the notoriety and the facial recognition was there for me always. And I mean, hey, you did over 5,000 episodes of SportsCentre as well, so you were out there quite a bit.
Yeah, it's just there's a big difference between doing TSN and doing Hockey Night in Canada, for instance. It's just like that's a way bigger platform. The biggest platform I ever had was 2010 Olympics in Whistler. There was one person in the broadcast business who thought, you know what, Landsberg can do this. He can be mainstream, and that guy was Keith Pelly, who was running the Olympic Consortium in 2010 and gave me this amazing job of hosting on CTV. So,
yes.
But Michael,
awesome.
you believe that honestly, Michael, that you can only do kind of niche broadcasting because you did figure skating at the Olympics. I remember it vaguely. And what I'm saying to you is that when you were so comfortable talking about MMA at times when I saw you, and initially when I was on your show, you weren't as comfortable, but as time went on with the Dana White interviews and things like that, it's you have this ability to comprehend things very quickly when it comes to sports. Now, I don't know about any other niche in your life, but I know with sports, what I watched you do is like other announcers kind of like fake their way through it. And it seemed like you actually paid attention.
I would agree with that. I would agree with all of that. I mean, some of it's a compliment. Some of it is just, we're all different and we're all wired differently. But yeah, I do believe that that I was not for everyone. And like, you ever heard anyone say they don't like James Duthie? Like, I don't think anyone has ever said that, right?
Yeah.
And that's, and that's who you want on the broadcast when you want everyone to watch. So it was kind of like, this is who I am. I would throw it out there, and some people liked it and some people, really didn't like it. And I was okay with that, right? Like, it wasn't like I was trying to play to the mainstream. It was like, this is who I am. And, if someone will hire me and give me a chance and allow me to work and do it, great. If not, then I'm screwed. But I kind of never really shaped myself by what I thought the audience wanted.
But they did like you, though, didn't they? Because someone had to have liked you because you ran so long on television. So
18 years with Off the Record. I mean,
there was don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that nobody liked me. Did I say that?
No,
I didn't say that.
But I guess in
what
some
I'm
ways
saying is that with me, it's like, if I was actually at a focus group. They allowed me to come and watch a focus group for Off the Record. There was 30 people there. This is honestly one of the funniest stories of my life. And they let me come because they knew that I could handle it, right? They knew that that I had this belief in myself, but also that I knew that there were people that didn't like me. So I'm behind the glass. And there's this conference room filled with people. And there's a guy that they brought up from the United States who does a lot of work with ESPN who was running this thing. So he says, okay, I'm going out there. So we're watching. They can't see us. and he says, okay, you guys don't know why you're here. We just all wanted you to be sports fans, but I'm going to tell you right now, it has to do with TSN. And one guy's hand shoots up. He goes, it better not be against Landsberg, because I freaking hate that guy. I hate that guy. And I'm sitting across the glass from him with my bosses, right? The three people that, one level up, one level up, one level up. And it was so funny because this guy didn't even know that's what it was about. And then the moderator goes, yeah, actually that's why we're here. So
okay, so then let's jump right to it. You first meet Pavlich. What were the first impressions? What did you think of? I
thought he was like, for real. I thought he was I kind of didn't love him at the beginning. I think, like me, I mean, I've just come clean about, I'm an acquired taste, right? And I think you have to understand. I think Mark plays well to a smart audience. And I think you need to understand Mark and the layers with which he's speaking, as opposed to just taking him on face value. He's got a swagger and he's got an attitude. And if you think that's represents him and the way he sees himself, you're probably not necessarily going to like him a lot. So I kind of felt my way through it. And then, probably after the first 20 minutes, I thought, yeah, you know what? I like this guy. And then, in ensuing times that we met each other and, did television together, I started to really appreciate the fact that, he was a really smart guy. So, I mean, that's about the biggest compliment I can give, which is that you're a guy who appeals to smart people. And I'm a smart person, right? I'm not school smart. I'm not school smart. My brother's kidney doctor, kind of a legend when it came to University of Toronto, got scholarship to medical school and all of that. And that was never me. I just found out that my intelligence is in a different area and comes out in different ways.
But is that why, do you think in 1988, I believe you also did figure skating in Calgary? And do you think that was the fortitude that people had that thought, oh, maybe Landsberg can get the ratings up somehow for watching figure skating at that time?
No, I think that there wasn't that much thought that went into it. I think that was, okay, how many people actually work at TSN? Okay, the Olympics. Yeah. Like I'm being honest with you. Like this was not as important nearly as 2010 was. 2010 was the biggest thing that TSN CTV ever did and maybe ever will do. But in 1988, it was like, okay, let's see, who do we have for this? And Landsberg, can he do figure skating? And he was like, probably not, but let's give it to him anyway, because no one else was like. There was only I don't know, 8 of us that worked at TSN.
Because you were there from the beginning, right? Right from the very beginning. Yeah,
I was.
Do you love sports?
I love broadcasting. I love sports, but I don't necessarily love sports broadcasting together. I can love them separately, right? Yeah. I mean, there's some sports that I mean, for a while, especially on SportsCentrre, SportsDesk, I started to hate hockey just because I saw so much of it. It was like, oh God, I don't want to see this anymore. Like thousands of shows, which means thousands and thousands of highlight packs of hockey. And I started to find it, kind of dull. And then when we started Off the Record, I started to sort of get my fandom back. But the bottom line is I enjoy the broadcast process more than I enjoy talking about sports. Like, I'd be just as happy to talk about mental health, or I'd be just as happy to talk about World War II, to be honest. I mean, World War II is kind of like my thing. That's my hobby. That's where I get really excited. If someone ever asked me a question, just, at the dinner table, hey, Michael, by the way, on D-Day, and they ask me a question, and be like, oh my God. I've been like waiting for this my whole life.
Okay, so, but I guess that was what Off the Record was, though, because it was a little more behind the scenes, a little off the record. So yes, sports figures, but a little deeper than that. And that was something that I assume that you like to do a little more.
We found our way. We kind of like felt our way through the early going. at on Off the Record. Like, we had this idea. When I say we, it was Bob Makowitz, who was the producer of the show for about a decade, and had no television experience whatsoever. And he got the job as producer. He came in. He and George Strombolopoulos and Jeff Merrick came in looking for a job on Off the Record. And this is just when we were starting. And it was obvious that the other two guys, Jeff in particular, or George in particular, wanted to be on the air, right? And Jeff wanted to be on the air too, but was probably a little behind George in that regard. So Bob stayed, got a job, and I quickly realized that he was incredibly bright and had a take on the sports world that was not traditional, right? So I went to the guy I mentioned before, Keith Pelley, who was the vice president of programming, and I said, Keith, you got to have lunch with Bob Makowitz. He's the smartest guy in our building, and that includes you, and that includes me. So just so you know, he goes, Mako, really? I go, yeah. He goes, he's got like this crazy hair. And I go, so you're then saying to me that, wild hair is a reflection of lack of IQ? Just talk to him. He called me that night and said, hey, Michael, do you want, I love Bob. Do you want him to produce the show? And I said, well, we already have a producer. I'm not going to stab him in the back. That's up to you. And he said, well, just tell me. And I said, well, I can't do that. I like the producer of the show. Right. So this went on, and there was no ending to it until he said, okay, well, you think the show would be better if Bob was producing? And I thought, okay, I'm cracking. And the answer was yes. So we felt our way through. We realized that if you wanted to book interesting guests from different worlds, actors and politicians and writers and all of these different people that weren't necessarily associated with sports, you couldn't talk about, Zach Hyman. Where's he going to go? Right. Where you couldn't talk about like Adam Larson. Is he going to re-sign? You could talk about social, moral, and political issues that surrounded sport. Right. And I used to give like the pregame speech regarding that. I can remember saying to Pink, the singer, she's going like, I don't know why my agent booked me, to do this show, or my manager. And I said to her, well, you're a basketball fan, aren't you? She goes, yeah, a little bit. Do you like Allen Iverson? Yeah, I love Allen Iverson, because she was a 76ers fan. So I said to her, okay, well, I mean, when he said practice, what did you think? So she sort of goes off on a tangent, and I go, that's what we're doing today. So it kind of evolved into that.
Yeah, that's what I loved about the show, to be honest with you. I love that other side. And to be honest, that's what the Me and Jesse podcast tries to do now too, because we want to get to the deeper part of actual human beings and see what actually makes them tick beyond the sport. Now,
do you think that though, Michael? Do you think that's happening then? Because I'm more concerned with that today, because I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sick and tired of hearing about cancer. I've had it up to hearing about cancer. Because I have a charity, right, that I have, but people were saying, because they hear cancer. So people are saying that. And then the other day I'm listening to someone say, oh, enough with this mental health already. I've had it up to here with mental health. And I said, it's interesting, right? Because this person probably has never experienced it. He's blessed and gifted by God saying, you don't have mental health. And I said to him, can you imagine? That's a fantastic thing. First of all, the people with cancer must be heartbroken by you saying this. And the people like me that suffer from brutalizing anxiety, that take no medication whatsoever, have been trying to figure this out for 54 years. I said, there's a problem with that, because it's easy for you to say not to be sick of it. But my dear friend with the beard next to me here suffers from debilitating depression. Michael Landsberg in the middle suffers from depression and anxiety, and up to
hey, debilitating. Hello, don't give him the debilitating and leave me off that. Well, his is worse than mine.
No, and I definitely don't want to do that. And then up to about 2 years ago, on air for the first time ever, I said to people about Jesse always knew, my family knows about my anxiety. Now, I didn't have anxiety when it was cool to have anxiety. I had anxiety when you were in grade school and didn't want to leave your house till I was an adult. So the funny part of this is, the three of us are on the show today, and to talk about sports would be a disservice to people watching. And I want to talk about sports 24/7. My son's probably texting me at this moment, Dad, don't talk about mental illness no more. Talk about sports. And today's the day we do have to talk about mental illness. With the three of us on this show, it would be a disservice to everybody.
I'm going to say this, that it's also how you talk about it.
Correct.
I mean, my whole thing about this, when I talk about our charity, when I talk about ideas, when I talk about, people say, hey, like if you came and spoke corporately to us, to our company, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything that you've ever seen before. My goal is to make it fun and entertaining. I go, fun and entertaining? What the hell are you talking about? Depression? I go, the subject is serious, but that doesn't mean that I have to be serious about everything to do with it. And I said, besides, I can make jokes about depression and anxiety and medication, and I can make jokes about suicidal thoughts because I speak firsthand, right? So I'm poking fun at myself. And then I said, and I can make Jewish jokes as well, right? So, those are like the two things that I can do that no one can really criticize. So it's how you talk about it as well.
Correct. And that's the way I've always saw that. But it's so funny because people would come up to me after a while and be like, hey, what's with Landsberg's hashtag sick not weak? What do you think about that, Mark? You go, and they would say, you're like a lion, Mark. You're like a lion. And I'm like, well, I'm a lion because I've convinced myself of that mentality, right? I don't hashtag that, but I've convinced myself of like, I need to hike all the time. I need to exercise all the time. I need to hydrate. If I don't stay on these routines, I'm in big, big trouble. So I've had this routine, and I have also now not adopted the milk glass of vodka before I exit my house to go to a function. I've stopped doing that, right? So because that was kind of the medication I was being fed to go out in public. But what I'm trying to get across today is, and I know people were like, well, what are you going to talk about with Landsberg? We're going to talk about sports or whatever. I'm like, no, we have to talk about this because three guys don't get together to talk about it. Three guys don't talk about it. One guy talks about it, and one guy talks about it. Bell Let's, no offense to Bell Let's Talk, but they come around once a year and they go, hey, here we are. You're here 365 days with Sick Not Weak, so we have to talk about that. And we have to talk about your daughter's cookie company because when she opens, because that's still a very big weakness of mine, and it is called Sweetsies. And you know what's funny? When it comes to Alberta, I would like to invest into a cookie company because Jesse, it only makes sense. I love cookies and they have to be great. And I saw that you were doing that. So I thought, good for her. And I want everybody on Instagram to follow her today, and I'll put it on our show after. I think it's super important. When I love seeing young kids become entrepreneurs. That is I just love seeing them get out there and hustle.
Yeah. By the way, we're live, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the reason why I say that is because today, being the 19th of July, is a birthday of a guy that changed my life. And it just by coincidence that we're having this conversation. His name is Tyson Williams. He's from North Battleford, Saskatchewan. And when I sort of came out and talked about my battles with mental health, I was on Off the Record, right? And I'd never spoken about it before because I thought, like, who cares? Like, people will go, oh, yeah, poor Michael. He just wants our sympathy. Right. So I didn't know, like, the idiot that I can be. I didn't know that there was this stigma attached to it where just talking about it would make a difference in someone's life. So I'll talk really quickly through this. This story is unbelievable. Like, the Tyson Williams story is crazy. I wish I had more time to tell more about it. But so here we are in 2009, coming off the worst year of my life in 2008 by far, where there wasn't a single moment that I felt any joy about anything. That's how depressed I was. And in 2009, I was feeling better. So I thought, okay, you know what? I read that Stéphane Richer, the Stanley Cup champion with the Montreal Canadiens and the New Jersey Devils, two-time 50-goal scorer, last Montreal Canadian to score 50 goals. And hopefully he'll remain that way and no Montreal Canadian will ever score 50 goals again. But I said to him, Stéphane, can you come outside from the green room? He said, what? I said, well, I heard you battled depression in the 90s and I want to know, if I can ask you about it. And he said, I'd rather not talk about it. It's very painful. And I said, okay, hey, I'm glad I asked you. But if you'll talk about it, I'll talk about it. And he said, what would you talk about? So I explained to him a bit about me. He said, okay, let's do it. So we went on the air. We talked for maybe 90 seconds. That was it. And the next day I started getting emails, almost all of them from men, and all of them saying essentially the same thing. Hey, Michael, watching you and Stéphane yesterday talking about depression was the first time in my life I've seen two men talking about mental illness. The fact that you talked about it without shame and embarrassment and without seeming weak has empowered me to tell you that I suffer as well. And I've never told another human being that. I mean, I'm reading this stuff and I'm going, holy crap. My God, like, how did this happen? So 2.5 years later, I corresponded with all these people, of course. Like, who wouldn't? You'd have to be a jackass not to.
Of course.
2.5 years later, I get an email that says, hey, Michael, you don't remember me? Tyson Williams from North Battleford, Saskatchewan. I did remember him. He said, we had a conversation and I think I was not totally honest with you, and I better be honest right now. I didn't tell you that when you responded to my email, I was in my closet with a belt around my neck in the process of ending my life. I had written a letter to my daughter and my parents, and I realized at the time that they would be better off without me. And I was going to end my life. And I heard the computer go and I thought, okay, well, I better check and see who it is. And it was you. And I responded back to you by saying, hey, Michael, hey, thanks for reaching out. I'm surprised like anyone actually really cared that much. He went back. He said, I went back to finish the job. I went back in the closet and got the belt and I heard the computer go again. And it was you. That went back and forth 5 times. The last time I yelled at the computer, my God, that guy doesn't shut up even in email. But he said, the last thing you said to me was, what do you got to lose? Now, I didn't know that he was on the verge of ending his life. I just thought he seemed hopeless. And I said, what do you got to lose? So anyway, fast forward 2.5 years, he says, you know, like I went to the doctor and I got help and look at me. Now I'm doing okay. And then about 5 years later, he says to me, hey, Michael, would you be the best man at my wedding? Like, oh my God, so crazy. So I schlep, which is a Jewish term, which is relevant because no Jew has ever schlepped up to Prince Albert, not Prince Albert. What was it? I'll remember in a second what it was. Anyway, so I went there. I was, you know, like I stood up for him and it was like, I only met that guy once in my life. And here I am at his wedding. It was really cool.
Wow. That, I mean, can't make that. So that's incredible.
I don't think there's a guest that's come on our show. We've never brought up mental illness on our show, very rarely on purpose, because Jesse and I, Theo did, but we've had, because Jesse and I had a podcast about mental illness for many years. And the funny part was the second we turned it into a sports podcast, January 1st of this year, we got advertisers coming out of the yin yang. You know what's funny? When we did one about mental health, you know how much advertisement we got? Very little. And that's the part. My son walks in the studio one day and he says, Dad, what are you doing? Go sports, turn it over to sports. The next day, the same 2 guys, once talking about mental illness, now we're talking about sports and having guests on. And now people are calling us to advertise on our podcast. And I said, oh, it's not interesting, right? But every chance we get to dip back inside of it, it's very important, especially when you have 3 dudes together. It's very important, but every one of our guests at one time or another has brought up in their endeavor, whatever they've done, they've had problems. And they brought that up. Yeah. Brought that up.
What was it, Michael, for you that just pushed you over the edge to actually start to say something publicly? Mm-hmm. What was the moment?
You know what? The moment was, I think we were probably taping the show around 3:00. And at 2:30, I was at my desk still, and I was reading about Stefan. And the last paragraph in the story said, Stefan Richer battled depression throughout the 1990s and says that it really detracted from his enjoyment of hockey. I had no intention whatsoever of talking about it until I read that. And when I asked him to do it, I wasn't thinking, you know, we could really make a difference in the world. I just thought, you know, interesting question for a guy who people know, right? So I wasn't trying to do any good. I only talked about my own battle because I thought it was the way to convince him to do it. But I never spoke about it, but I was never ashamed or embarrassed. Everybody in my life knew. I talked about it all the time. I just thought, who cares? What's the value of talking about it on TV? Right. And then I find out the next day that there was huge value to it. And we all have that ability, the 3 of us, because we get platforms for it. But, you know, anyone, if you're at a party and there's like 15 people around and you just look at the party and say, hey, guys, I mean, it's not likely anyone's going to do this. But if you said, hey, you know, by the way, it's something you don't know about me. You know, I battled depression. I'm on medication for it. I have really felt like when I woke up in the morning, what's the point? What's the point in getting out of bed? If someone shares that in a group, that just changes the whole perception of mental illness in that group. Just the way it changed people's perception when Stefan Richer and I talked about it on TV. It changed people's perceptions when the 2 of you talk about it. It's incredibly powerful, incredibly important, and still to this day, I think as important as it's ever been. I just still believe that stigma is still pervasive.
Absolutely, it is. And so when you were there and the Bell Let's Talk Day, so I mean, really, there probably isn't a Bell Let's Talk Day unless you and Stefan do that show.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Come on. We could say that on our show. Of course it is. Like, no one talked about it prior
was
to
like the first, like, to actually start to really.
No one.
I don't remember anyone else talking about it.
Never.
Yeah. Who else has talked about it since at TSN?
That's true.
I thought it was going to spread. Actually, you know who has spoken about it? Jennifer Hedger. We had an event at Peterborough when we started our charity Sick Not Week. This would have been probably 4 years ago. We had an event in Peterborough. They were fundraising for us, and they were going to raise like good money, probably $100,000, which no one had ever offered to do that before, and probably ever since. So, we wanted to make it really good and give people value. So I asked Theo Fleury to come and speak. I asked Haley Wickenheiser, asked Clint Malarchuk, Jennifer Hedger. Now, I knew about Hedges' depression, but I had never heard her speak about it. So when I asked her to come, I was not counting on her actually opening up. I just thought everybody loves Jen Hedger, right? So this will be good for the event, and we'll do an interview about sports or something, and it'll be great. And she gets up on stage and she goes, I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'm hearing other people. So you know what the hell? And she talks about how she's being debilitated by depression at times, and how it was incredibly difficult for her to first go to a doctor and seek help and to embrace it. And she said, like, she really has a battle that goes on, probably 365 days a year. I'll tell you, for me, that treatment has given me my life back. And while I'm not perfect in terms of my depression and anxiety, I'm able to live my life and to enjoy my life. But there's a lot of time for Hedge that she can't do that, and it's incredibly powerful and heartbreaking to hear her speak about it, because she will talk about it. I mean, Jennifer Hedger is 6 foot tall, beautiful woman, incredibly smart, huge passion, great performer on television, all of that, and yet she can have doubts about her relevance to being on television. She'll say, I don't belong on television. I'm no good. Why do people want to watch me? She goes, I'm a faker, totally. And that's a great message to pass along to other women in particular, who can look at her and say, well, she's got everything. So obviously everything does not insulate you from mental illness.
Exactly.
For yourself, how old were you when you noticed depression? And then you said you talked about a lot of, obviously a lot of guys don't, but how did you get over that? And then I want to know too, the overcoming part of it, because you said you're able to enjoy a lot of your life now. So how did you personally overcome a lot of that?
Okay, so my background is that from the time I was 5, I battled anxiety. I was afraid to do so many things that other kids, never hesitated to do. Like I wouldn't ride on buses because I had this fear of throwing up and being around people who would throw up. It's called emetophobia. I was so excited when I found out there's actually a name for it. Because if you would have told me,
I know.
If you would have told me when I was 8 years old and living with this inside and hiding this from the world, if you would have said, actually, there's other people who have this illness and there's a name for it, I would have changed my life. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important that we do what we do. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I was hanging out with a person that lives around the corner. Their daughter has emetophobia. And, I'm telling her, I understand. And she goes, well, how could you understand? I go, I understand because I've been through it. I'm going through it. She said, well, kind of prove to me that you understand. So I described to her like what it's done to me and what I feel. And she went, wow, I never thought anyone would come close to understanding me. So that was me and my start with anxiety, which I think my anxiety, that in particular is probably, 50% under control. But I still have general anxiety where there's times when I can't tell you, I can't tell you what I'm anxious about. I can just tell you that if my body could express itself, this would be it, where I'm going, come on. Okay. Yeah. That's like the outward feeling of what's inside my head. And then depression. Just after we started off the record, I fell into this deep, dark hole that I had no idea where I was, right? Because you see, like mental illness doesn't usually hit you like bam, all of a sudden, oh my God. It's like this tiny change. And I didn't even know that I changed until a couple of things alerted me to things that I had said I didn't want to do, and rejected these opportunities. And I thought, wow, that's not like me. Why would I do that? And then I started to forensically evaluate my own life, and I realized there's something really wrong with me. So that was kind of the beginning of the next step in my life, which was to try to find a way to deal with this and to try to get my life back.
Wow. And then, so you discover that. How do you find help? Where did you seek help? And what was the process of overcoming?
You know, I think for me, it was a couple of false starts in the system. You know, my family doctor, whom I really liked and had, you know, he retired 2 years ago, say, but I probably visited him or had appointments with him, I don't know, over 25 years, probably, I don't know, like 75 times or whatever. And he had 74 really good days with me. And he had one really bad day when I told him about how I was feeling. And he said, oh, well, you know, like, you don't want to like go on medication. You don't want to start like down that road. He said, you know, just, you know, like, get out and do more fun things. And I thought, oh, wow, that guy's got no clue at all, like none. And I talked my way into a psychiatrist's office, and I knew I needed something at that point. I knew that I could not talk my way out of this. I could not lifestyle change my way out of this. That's how low and deep in this hole I was. And I got a prescription, and I went downstairs to the Shoppers Drug Mart in the building. I bought a bottle of water, filled the prescription, took the first pill right there. And medication gave me my life back.
Did you struggle with that? Taking that pill?
Well, I didn't at the time. And the times in my life when I've been most desperate, I have not struggled in any way. But here I am now, doing well for you know, a number of years, and thinking to myself, okay, do I really need the medication? And you know what reminded me of that was actually, I don't know, can you read it here? What I have written on my arm, it's 11/24/08 YUL MH5210400, which is November the 24th, 2009, Montreal, YUL, Marriott Hotel Room 521, 4 a.m. in the morning. That's when I was at my lowest, and that's when I realized.
Is that tattooed? Is that tattooed on or written on?
No, I just write it on for. You know, I keep it on there because I give a lot of talks, right? And it gives me a focal point where 4 a.m. in the morning, I'm sitting on the edge of my bed, guys, and I'm going, God, I know why people take their own lives, right? You know, I just like, there was just nothing that I could feel that was anything but pain. And it's weird, right? I don't have to tell you guys, so I'm not speaking to you guys, but it's very difficult to describe what is the pain of depression, for instance. Like how do you put it into words? Like, you don't have to explain to someone what a toothache feels like, right? No. I mean, they know. But depression is just really hard to describe. And that's why I think in you know, for so many people, it's so difficult to understand or impossible to understand who haven't been through it. And that's probably one of the reasons why the stigma continues to dominate, because we wonder, like, what is this thing? So that was for me the lowest point, when I would have done anything to get better at that point. Honestly, like if you would have said, Michael, we can make you better, but we have to cut off your pinky on your
You would have gave it up. You would have gave it up.
I would have said, do it. Just freaking do it, because you know what? It's going to hurt like hell.
But then it's over.
Now, all of a sudden, even with a sore pinky, I'm going to be able to feel joy, something that depression prevents me from feeling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can relate to that very fully. You know, December 23rd, 2017, sitting in my recliner and just weeping and not knowing why. You know why, but you don't. You're in the black hole. That's how I tell people. You're in the black hole, and it's like you're drowning. You can see the shore, but you no longer have energy to get there. And you know that you're safe if you could get there, but you just can't.
Yeah, it's a great way to describe it. You know, it's I could try to top that, and make no mistake, I could, but I'm going to give you this one and say, no, that's a really good description of it. It's like, I always use the dark hole, like you're in this hole and you look up and you can see the top, but you can't figure out how to get there. And you resign yourself to the fact that this is never getting better. This feeling of hopelessness. I mean, that hopelessness is suicide's ally, right? You know, like this feeling of I'm never getting better. I know I'm never getting better, and I'm all alone. No one in this hole, no one could possibly understand what I'm feeling. So, like for guys like the three of us to have this conversation is really healthy it's certainly healthy for me to hear other people describe their own battles, right?
Because
are you, Michael, a routine guy though? Have you become a routine guy? Are you a guy that has to get up at a certain time every day? Do you have to exercise every day? Do you have to hydrate every day? Do you have to do these things to help you along the way, or no?
To be honest, I've never found the recipe for me other than medication. And let me say this about meds. I am not an advocate of medication. I'm not an opponent of medication. I tell people, if you're sick enough, like the three of us have been, you got to say, I'll do anything to get better.
Yeah.
And like only a fool goes to medication first. I mean, medications are flawed. They have side effects. They only work 50% of the time. They're going to change who you are. Yeah. Like I said, it gave me a life back. It didn't give me my life back because I'm changed. I'm not exactly the same person I was. But when you're sick enough, you got to be able to say, God, I'll do anything, whether it's therapy, whether it's, people get their brain shocked, ECT. I would have lined up for ECT in a heartbeat if I had tried other things and they hadn't worked.
Yeah. Wow. Was there any, I'm assuming the therapy and the counseling stuff, and was there any different methods that you tried to go down?
I tried counseling, but, it was like, I kind of said, especially after a while, I said, when I relapsed, especially like when I went on Prozac and then after a year, and this is a cycle that I wish we had more time, but there's a cycle that we all go through with medication is all you can think about is getting better. You could care less about the side effects, right? And you get better if you're lucky with the medication, not all better, but you feel like, okay, I'm back to living, right? And you go, I don't care about the side effects. And then after about a year, you go, oh God, these side effects are really, they're really affecting me. And was I ever really that sick? So you start to take the treatment for granted and you go off the drugs, which I did repeatedly. And, I knew that I couldn't talk my way through this. Yeah. I knew that it wasn't, unresolved.
It was real.
Issues.
It was real. It was real.
Something, can I swear? Am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Yeah. Like my head was fucked. And, they don't know what it is, right? They used to think it was like a chemical imbalance in serotonin. But a couple of years ago, they went, holy shit, we don't have any clue what this is. We don't know why selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors actually work. Right. We just know that in 50% of people that take it, they get relief.
Wow. Exactly. We're a long ways. I mean, obviously we're a long ways off of
yes,
figuring and making and breaking the stigma, really. And I wish that it was just as easy as guys coming out and saying, hey, this is how it is, and everything would be magically fixed, but it isn't, because there's so much unknown. I mean, in Alberta, for example, we spend 1% of our healthcare budget on mental health, and so that doesn't really cut it when you're trying to discover new things. So it has to go to a higher level, even politically in our country, where we do need to have advocates like yourself out there. I want to say lobbying, but that's the word I'll use. Lobbying our government to actually spend some more money on this.
It is lobbying. And you know what's funny? A lot of people, it's the same. I was joking today because someone messaged me and said, oh, did you see the kid came out today? He came out, first hockey player. Yeah. And he's not even in the NHL yet. He's drafted by the Nashville Predators, right? And I said, well, and the football player came out, and I said, you imagine that, everybody. 2021, first time in history someone comes out in 2021. So we're expecting that this mental health thing, we're going to just it's going to take over the world because so many people suffer from mental health, but it's just going to be like, oh, this person's, it's almost the same thing I'm telling you about coming out for people that are gay.
Well, because
that's how people think though, because it's like, listen, I was 52 years old before the first time I ever said to anybody outside my family that I have this problem with anxiety. You couldn't believe the amount of people that emailed me and called me and thought I was going to jump off the high level bridge because I admitted that I had anxiety. And I was like, wow. I was like, oh, and it was because of you, Jesse. It was because of you. I said it out loud, and I know you knew it the whole time, but it was interesting how people reacted immediately to me. Like, it was weird how they were like, "Hey, are you okay?"
The other causes, I think, they have more of a point. They like racism. Yeah. You can point at that and say, "Hey, that's racism," or the kid coming out saying, "Hey, well, that he's gay, so that has a face." Like, you can put that. Mental illness doesn't have that finite, that point that you can actually kind of, it's just like a broad, we don't really understand. and anybody could have it. So it's not really a face of it.
Let me tell you that the stigma in my mind is based on the perception of weakness, right? It's like no one wants
Totally.
And if we could ever if Mark, if you went to your doctor and your doctor said, "We take some blood and see what your anxiety levels are," and they came back and they went, "Oh man, you're at a 38." I'm just making these numbers up. Oh my God, that's like so out of control. We got to do something about that. No one would doubt it. No one would say, "Well, like, is it really that bad?" Or like, is he just, maybe just a little mentally weak? We can't show it. We can't prove it. We can't biopsy it. We can't x-ray it. We can't MRI it. We can't take a blood test. Yeah. It's all anecdotal. The only thing that you know about my illness is what I tell you. Yeah. And if I could prove it to you, I think people's views would change.
Yeah. Someone wants to know how many times you had to change your medication to feel better, or has it always been the same thing?
I've been on, I started on Prozac, and then when I went back on after going off, I thought, okay, well, maybe there's something better that I won't have the same side effects. So I went on Zoloft. I got relief, but I had, a lot of the same side effects. I went off Zoloft for a year, and I was doing well. And then I relapsed. I went on Celexa, and then I went off Celexa and relapsed, and I went on Effexor, which I did not like at all, but I still got better. But there was a lot of stuff that went with it that I didn't like. And then I was off everything for, I guess, about 2 years in 2008, November 24th, 2008, Marriott Hotel in Montreal, room 521, 0400 a.m. in the morning. That's when I was off everything. And when I went back on, I went on Cipralex, escitalopram, and Wellbutrin. And that's where I'm at today.
Wow. Well, I know Michael, Michael graciously came on the show, and because he has another appointment, so he said,
he has many. He's
kind of a big deal, as I said at the beginning.
When you're a Canadian, when you're a Canadian icon, you have shit to do. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, one sec. Hey, Ron McLean. Suck. Oh.
You can say that on this show.
Yeah. Actually, I would. I mean, I like you guys. I mean, Jesse, I just met you, but this is kind of like, guys, when you feel like you're with your peeps, right? You know, like when you go.
That's what I said. I was going to tell I was going to tell the opening line today. I was going to say, what did the Jewish guy with depression and anxiety, the bearded guy with depression, and the Croatian guy with anxiety all have in common today? They all went on the Me and Jesse podcast, because that's exactly what it was. And it's like, it's almost counterproductive to talk, actually, no offense to sports, but we talk about that 365 days of the year. But between the three of us, and when Theo Fleury came on, it was the same thing, right? Like Theo needed to vent. And I'm okay with venting. So vent, Theo. Darren McCarty came on. He also brought that up. I mean, many guys, and that wasn't the topic of conversation, but they felt like when we got on the Me and Jesse podcast that they just felt like, okay, I'm going to talk about this shit that I never could talk about when I was in the NHL. I'm not in the NHL or NFL anymore, and here I go. And it was just like, wham. And we couldn't believe it. And it started happening every show after every show after every show.
Yeah, Darren McCarty's a guy that one of the best things we ever did on Off the Record was we got Darren McCarty and Claude Lemieux to do the show together.
Incredible.
Yeah. And these guys they had never met since McCarty hit him and Lemieux turtled, right?
Yeah.
And it was amazing because it's so weird that in hockey, you can fight a guy, you can hate a guy, but ultimately you can respect that guy. I mean, one time in our green room, we had, it was Matthew Barnaby and I'll think of who it was. Harvey. What's his first name? He used to play for the Oilers. What's that case? Todd Harvey, thanks.
Todd Harvey,
yeah. So Todd Harvey, and in our green room, there, Harvey goes to Barnaby. Hey, Barnes, hockey players, right? Hey, Barnes, you remember that night in Buffalo? He goes, "Are you freaking kidding me? I never told you." He said, so now he's explaining the story to me. He's saying, we had this fight, and Harvey broke my nose, and I was like in really bad shape. And my family was at the game, and my family are street thugs essentially. And he said they decided they were going to find out what hotel you were staying at, and they were going to come and settle the score. And I went to them. This is Barnaby. No, you can't do that. This is like, this stays on the ice. You know, he's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
You know, like there's this. I mean, that story kind of really shows you the weirdness of the hockey fight, which is, you know, like these guys.
Well, Georgia Rock said
because
that
in
too.
real life, let's face it, in real life, if you ever fought someone, like if you were in a bar, in a restaurant, or on the street, you'd only do it because you hated them, right? Because you were so pissed off.
Yeah. I was on the show once. I was on the show about 6 times, but I was on one time with Dana White. And I refused to ever talk to him when I was at the UFC because I owned the MFC. And then we were on the show together, and the opening line, Michael says, "Oh, you two know each other?" Like, it was so funny because I never liked him, and he never liked me, right? So, and to this day, I mean, I respect him, but I never liked him. I never liked his demeanor, and I'm sure he didn't like mine either. So,
yeah, you know what? There's a real power in life when you go, hey, you know what? That guy doesn't like me, but I don't care, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it's just like, be true to yourself, right? Yeah. You know, I mean, I
respect him. I respected him, but it's not one of my kind of guys, so.
Well, Michael, I know you have to go, but you know, we could have you on for hours, and hopefully we get you on another day too, because
hey, you know what? If you name the date, I promise you I will not say no. So that's like the guarantee. Like
Christmas
if you say,
Day.
you know,
No,
I'm Jewish.
That's Hanukkah.
Oh, that's I care about Christmas Day. Santa has done dick all for me. Seriously. You know, when I was a kid, it was like, did Santa leave anything?
Yeah, nothing.
Like, no,
nothing.
Yeah, you got me on that one. Well, we thank you so much for spending the time with us. I honestly, when Mark told me he landed you, I was like, oh my gosh, this is up there. Kelly Rudy and you are my 2 favorite guests we've ever had on here.
Love Kelly Rudy. Oh my God, I love Kelly Rudy.
Everybody, listen. When we said we were going to have you on the show, people went crazy, and I said, you know, it's funny because I know you can't perceive yourself, Michael, and I'm at an age now where I'd say I feel like, not in a bad way. I'm saying is I have such a great esteem for you because there was times like you did things for my organization that you didn't even know you did. And you did them accidentally, but that paid off for me. Yeah, they did. Like you validated me at times. You know what I mean? And that's, I haven't been in the MMA business for 7 years, but at that time that was something very special. And I used to tell my wife that all the time. It's like, you know, there's people in life that validated what I did, and that was so special to me. So when I do compliment you, I come from a place of like, it's for real. It's like,
when I first met Mark, actually, he talked very highly of you.
Yeah, I just,
you know what it is also? It's like when ask me what I thought of you when I first met you, you know, the best friendships are ones that you have to work for, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, you know, like I was able to see after a little while what was really there with you, as opposed to, you know, people who would just look at the surface. So thanks for having me on, guys. And like I said, anytime I will come back. This was great fun, and you guys do good work. And you know what? Talking about sports.
Part 2 coming up, everybody. Part 2 coming up later this year.
Thanks so much, Michael. Have a great
day.
Thank you so
much. Thank you so much. Awesome.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Michael is an encyclopedia on sports, which most people don't realize too.
And that's the other thing too, right? Because, you know, I was going to talk to him, but we didn't have time. But you must, like, you have to have that encyclopedia part to be able to talk so much about it.
Did you see something interesting? His daughter,
yelled.
Her name is Casey. Okay,
Todd.
She yelled Todd Harvey out because I knew he was talking about. I'm like, I wasn't sure.
I couldn't remember his name. Dan.
Yeah, and she is Todd Harvey, and I mean, you have to understand that that's his son Corey is the same way. His son Corey used to help him run the show at Off the Record. He was the one that greeted me every time I came there.
Wow.
And you know, he really is an encyclopedia about sports. Isn't that interesting though? Because it's almost nonchalant for him to be an encyclopedia about sports. You know, he talks from a perspective of like, hey, you know, but you want to talk about this, but he also doesn't come across to talk about it like, poor me, I have these problems. So that's what I do like about Michael Landsberg, not alone about his broadcasting abilities, but about the mental illness part too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's good too to hear like the different stories, because I don't know, you and I have gone back and forth on this so much of the time too. It's like, just make a list, and I'm like, well, doesn't really work for me. So
correct. I know.
And
because,
again, like,
but you know what? I'm very clear on that too, though. Like I haven't suffered one day of depression in my entire life. I suffer from anxiety.
Right.
So two different things.
Yeah.
And you and I discussed that, and you made it more clear to me. But when we were doing a podcast about mental illness, and I didn't say a word about anxiety forever, but then like, no, I think you knew that there was these weird quirky things about myself
I might have known
that you were pointing out, right? And then you were pointing out to me these things, and then I'm like,
well, I think there's times, and I think that's what friends do, right? Like it's hard to say. You can't just say to someone, hey, you're a kook. But
you didn't do it in a weird way.
You did it in a way like, hey, you know why are you so upset about this thing that doesn't really matter? And people are like, well, why am I like that? And over time you realize, and again, it works for me too. And it's like, hey, and you do that to me, like, hey, how you feeling? And it's hard sometimes to say, but it does help you realize and put it in perspective. So so it is important that we talk to each other and bring these things up more often, because if you don't talk about it, is the biggest problem. That's the issue. Exactly. Is that you don't talk about it, and you have to. As painful as it can be inside, and it doesn't have to be a huge drawn out thing either. It can be a genuine question or a genuine thought or a genuine comment back and forth that lasts 2 minutes that really just kind of helps reset, or at least lets you feel like there's a little bit of an anchor or a landline that you can reach out to if you need it. And that's the important part about this, is that,
could you imagine having Landsberg on the show like that? And he started with TSN in 1984.
Yeah.
The question I wanted to know that you or I didn't ask, why after 18 years did they cut that show? 18 years Off the Record was on the air, and they cut
Off the Record on that long?
Yes, 18 years.
Wow.
Off the Record was on 18 years, and they cut it in 2015. And I was like, you know how many people must have said that to me, Jesse, over the years?
Well, he must have been done.
Well, I don't know, but we didn't get a chance to ask him, right? But part 2 will come.
Okay.
No, 1,000%.
Yeah, we'll get him in the fall.
Before the end of the year, we have to bring him back on. And everybody's asking us, and I'm telling you right now, George LaRocque has to come back on the show. Kelly Rudy has to come back on the show.
There's a bunch of people that we wanted.
Yeah, like when we started the podcast, I'm like, no, we'll just get different guests every week. And can everybody please go to YouTube and check out the Donald Penn episode?
Yes.
Because if I had $1 from everybody with a fat mouth from Raider Nation that said to me, he's not gonna do anything on your show, and he's not gonna do anything, and he killed it. Like, he absolutely killed it on our show. And there's so many great episodes of the Me and Jesse podcast. And once again, like I said, people will talk about things on this show that they won't talk about on any other shows. Listen, I'm not going to trash talk different podcasts, and they're out there, right? But this is not a circus show. This is a factual show. This is talking to our guest show. This is the Oprah Winfrey of sports sports podcast.
Well, and the reality is carrying on the off the record torch, really, because I mean that is what the idea behind it was. Hey,
yes,
off the record, what do you really think?
But this is carrying on the torch, but this is this has got a totally different twist to it, because
it's better you get to get. Yeah,
we can't have 4 people on doing this at the same time. It's me and you talking about it. You'll come up with the intelligent questions. I come up with the factual stuff that I want to know. Because I want to know about his thoughts on these type of things. And then I know he suffers from anxiety and depression, and I also hear him on Instagram. He talks about smoking weed. He talks about all these other things. So these are all these things I want to know the factors of, because for my anxiety, I tell everybody I've never took one medication in my entire life for it. I am a believer of I have to stay on a religious routine in my life. If I do
Yes.
not stay on this religious routine, and my routine is not boring, I know Jesse, and I have to put that disclaimer out every time I say it, because he hates routines because they're so boring. Mine is not boring. Mine is absolutely fantastic. I live for my routine because my routine keeps me in this lane where I am super healthy mentally, physically, and spiritually. Okay, everybody?
Yep.
And if I don't do these things, if I don't hike on, like, if I don't hike, if I don't bike, if I don't hydrate, if I don't do these type of things on a regular basis, I'm in big trouble, you know? And all joking aside, I did have to drink milk glasses of vodka to leave the house
Right.
before going to a function, and people wouldn't even know that. And I wouldn't consider myself ever of being an alcoholic or a problem drinker. So that's to tell you, because I drink very little in real life now. And the funny part is back then I would drink the milk glass so my wife would get me out of the house,
Right.
because I wouldn't even I wouldn't want to go. I don't want to go to this function.
Right.
Well, this function's for you, Mark. You know,
Yeah.
like I was like,
your party. Yeah.
I didn't know, you know. And so I'm blessed. Listen, I'm blessed because I have a wife that is just like, I tell her to her face and she doesn't believe it, but to say I've been beyond blessed by having a wife like I have, it is an understatement, because she basically has saved my life. You know what I mean? And not just saved my life, but encouraged me to see different sides of things in life. And I know, now it sounds like a grease job for my wife, but she doesn't believe me anyway. So every time I tell her this, but it's so true, and it's so important. But it's something that people are suffering from, and you know, we're going to talk about sports, but this stuff, you notice what comes up on our shows all the time. Mental illness comes up, addiction comes up, being blessed comes up. All these words come up on our show every episode. And I'm like, you can't get away from it, man. And we want you to leave the show today, not bummed out about depression or anxiety, but by, you know, getting to the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the goal.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching. Where was he going to go here? Oh, right. Any sports things happen over the weekend?
Yeah, of course. F1. And I can't even believe that shit. You tell me that my boy Hamilton, and this thing's not over yet, F1 racing
No, it
fans.
isn't. Because the issue with that one, and again, like that one.
I agree. But listen, I agree with you. It was a foul, okay?
Yes.
But listen, when the two big boys are
Yeah,
flexing,
no, it's true.
And listen, you know what's funny? I'm a huge I'm a huge fan of him now too.
He's
Okay,
a cool kid.
I'm a big fan of him. You know why?
23 only.
Because he's like me. He's aggressive. He wants to fight.
Yep.
He wants to take
Well,
position.
he knows who he's fighting. He's fighting
Hamilton.
He's
That's
fighting
it.
Mike Tyson in his prime.
100%.
Yeah.
And you know what's
And he
funny?
knows.
So they were both kind of at fault, but Hamilton was more at fault. Now, the problem with F1 we're noticing is the penalties that they're enforcing are inconsistent.
Yes.
So you say for one infraction, 10 seconds for this one, 5 for this one, 3 for that. It's bullshit.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything. F1, and I'm a huge Hamilton fan. I'm a huge Mercedes fan. But you can't do that, man.
Yeah, the only issue I really had with that one, well, because Max, it's a point thing. I mean, and that sucks.
And he had 0
loses
points, right? Yeah, 0.
And the speed of that corner, because that's 150 miles an hour, that corner. And you know, that's the scary one. But again, it shit happens. Like, that is racing. That is the nature. I totally get it.
You see how far he propelled.
Oh, geez. So he went in 51 Gs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's going so fast. I mean, forget about anything. I mean, on TV, it doesn't look that bad because he's smashing into tires. But but he's going so fast into that, and I don't think people
150
really
miles an hour, like 260 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, it's
that's
crazy.
Fast.
That's fast. Sideways.
Yeah, and that was the bad thing. That's why he took such a bad hit, because you know, there's not airbags. I mean, obviously they're designed amazingly, but you still feel it going into 51.
But people are writing off Mercedes. People are writing off Hamilton.
No, this ain't over.
I said don't even dare.
Anyone that really knows this ain't over. This is just it's actually going to be.
Fight.
It already is the best season they've had in ages.
Yeah,
this could be the best season ever. It is absolutely a heavyweight fight, and it's awesome.
It is. What about this one? How about Carey? We got to go fast.
Carey Price. I can't believe it. Mind blown.
unbelievable that Montreal could do that.
I'll be shocked. I mean, the Kraken, I know it's $10 million, but they have to take him.
Who cares?
You have
exactly.
to take him.
You have to take him.
Man, yeah. Holy moly. You get Carey Price as your goalie? Holy cow.
Good way to start it off.
And he's from the Pacific Northwest. So, I mean, hey, it's he lives there.
Yeah.
So
he's a BC guy, isn't he?
But he lives in Washington State a lot of the time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he lives near Seattle.
Oh, okay.
So he has two places in Kelowna and Seattle. Like he's from there. Like he lives there.
Wow.
And I think because his wife was from there, but I can't remember. But anyway, like because I know she was there during COVID in Washington State, not in Kelowna. But anyway, they're there a lot, so it makes absolute sense. They'd be crazy not to do it. Who cares if it's $10 million?
I totally agree.
You got an amazing goalie. That's going to be great.
I totally
that draft happens in 2 days on the 21st, I believe.
I'd be nuts not to do it, but I think Montreal is doing a humongous disservice.
I can't believe it.
Just out of I don't know, man. There's something about sports that sometimes I just go, really? After the season Montreal just had, and they looked fantastic, I became a Montreal fan. My wife is a Montreal fan to the highest degree, and I became a fan this year because I loved the Suzukis. I loved all those. I love to see them
Gallagher
all playing.
And,
all of them, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, these guys are going to be really good. And then you go shit on your Carey Price, which has been beyond stand-up guy for your organization. And by not protecting him, I was like, wow, did they just do that? Wow, so I don't know. Maybe they know something.
Well, they know that Jake Allen they have in their pocket, who is a good goalie.
Well, they say
he can spend money now on getting a big guy. So business-wise, I can make more of an argument than fan and
they say injuries too. They say suffering from multiple injuries.
Is a bit,
So they said, well, is that going to be a problem? And I'm like, if you're looking to take Montreal to the next level, maybe you need to leverage that money out somewhere else to get to the next level. You know what I mean? And I know it sounds crappy, but that is the world of professional sports, everybody. So
yeah, it absolutely is. If you have any glass needs, make sure you call 310 Glass, Crystal Glass for all of your glass needs.
Love them.
And until next time, who do we got next week?
Listen, we got him on the rocks right now. Matt Brown from the UFC, everybody. The Matt Brown. So he's on the rocks, and the week after,
Oilers fans, get ready.
Get ready. Uh-oh.
Grant Fuhr is coming in.
Grant Fuhr is booked.
So, I mean, that's pretty good. So we got a couple good shows coming up. Until next time. That's Mark Pavlich.
Yes.
I'm Jesse Marino. Thank you so much, Michael Landsberg, for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure, and it always will be whenever we have you on next. I'm very excited for that day.
Part 2 coming up.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Until next time, this has been the Me and Jesse podcast, the most exciting 60 minutes you spent on the internet this week. Don't even kid yourself. We'll see you next time, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for watching the Me and Jesse podcast. Follow us at facebook.com/meandjesse.